Alright, in this lecture we're going to talk about something called nested routes. What they are, why we need them, and how we can actually implement them in Express. So let's think for a second how in practice we actually want to create a new review. So up until this point, when creating new reviews, we always manually passed the tour ID and the user ID into the request body and then created the review from there, right? And that's okay during development, but of course, that's not how a review will be created in the real world, alright? So, in the real world, the user ID should ideally come from the currently logged in user, and the tour ID should come from the current tour. And that should ideally be encoded right in the route, so in the URL. So when submitting a post request for a new review, we will want to submit that to a URL like this. Let's write that down here just as a comment. Okay, so ideally we will want to do a request for post, for tour, and then the ID of the tour, so it doesn't really matter here, and then reviews. Okay, and so now, just like this, we have the tour ID right in the URL, and the user ID will then also come from the currently logged in user. Okay, and so what we see here is now a so-called nested route. And they make a lot of sense when there is a clear parent-child relationship between resources. And that is clearly the case here, right? So reviews is clearly a child of tours. And so this nested route basically means to access the reviews resource on the tours resource. All right, and in the same way, we will actually also want to access reviews from a certain tour in the same way. So let's say then a GET request, and again for tour/tour ID and /reviews. And this would then ideally get us all the reviews for this tour. Okay, and we could go even further and also specify the ID of the review. So again, just a random string here, but you get the point, right? So in this case, we would get review with the ID of this here on the tour with this ID. Okay? So this is what nested routes are all about. And this is a way more easier way of reading and understanding how the API works for our API users. Okay? It's way easier than messing around with query strings and all that stuff like that. Also, it really shows how there is this clear relationship between these resources. So again, reviews and tours. All right, but enough talk. Let's now actually implement this, starting with the post route. Now, since the route actually starts with tours, it will be, of course, redirected to our tour router, right? And so we're going to have to implement this functionality, at least for now, in the tour router, even though that seems a bit counterintuitive, since we're in fact dealing with reviews, right? But again, for now, let's implement it like this. So we come to our user router. And first, since we're actually going to use reviews here, we need to import the review controller. Controller require, maybe I should have just copied the line from before. So controllers and review controller. All right, now here at the very bottom, and let's actually get our code or this example from here, just as a reference. Okay, so that we can now actually implement it. So the route that we're going to implement here is /ID and then reviews, right? So this tour part here, as you already know, is where we mounted this router. And so therefore, we do not have to repeat it here. But then we have the tour ID and then /reviews. And in order to make this really clear, let's actually call it tour ID. Since we're now dealing with different resources here, so it's a bit clearer to really call it what it is. Okay? And so we now want to implement the create review. So auth controller dot protect we also want to restrict access only to users. And then, of course, our review controller dot create review. All right. So again, it is a bit weird and counterintuitive to actually call the review controller here in the user routes. And well, actually, it should not be in the user routes. So for some reason, I opened the user routes and not the tour routes. So sorry for that one. So let's cut it from here, come to our tour routes, and actually do it here at the bottom. All right. Of course, we also need to get the review controller. Okay, and so now we should be good to go. So that was a stupid bug. But anyway, what I was saying is that it doesn't make much sense to actually call the review controller in the tour route. But again, for now, we need to do it like this because the route starts with tour. And so it's this router that will get activated. And in the next video, we're going to fix that. But for now, we just want to make it work and to become familiar with this whole concept of nested routes. Anyway, we now got our tour ID right in the route, but of course, we need to let the controller know that it should now use this tour ID and also the currently logged in user's ID. Okay, and so we now need to go ahead and update our review controller. Okay, so right here at create review. And what we're going to do is this. So we will say if there is no request.body.tour, so basically if we didn't specify the tour ID and the body, then we want to define that as the one coming from the URL. So rec.body.tour equals request. And now remember how that URL parameter is on request.params. And then, of course, the name of the parameter itself, so tour ID. Okay, and so this is the first part. And second, we also need to do the same with the user. So if there is no request.user, or actually request.body.user, well, then the request.body.user should be request.user.id. Okay, and again, we get request.user from the protect middleware. Okay, and that's actually it. Let's just put a comment here. Nested routes. Okay, and so with this, we actually make it so that the user can still specify manually the tour and the user ID. Okay, so what we're doing here is simply to define them when they are not there. So when they're not specified in the request body. Okay, and so this should be enough for us to test this now. All right, so let's take a look at the users that we got at this point. So we have these two regular users. We have the test user and we have Jonas here, but we forgot his password. And so let's go ahead and delete this user and create a new one. All right. So encompass the users and it's this one. All right. So let's recreate this user basically. And all we really need is these two pieces of data. And actually that's sign up. Okay, so the same name, the same email, and the same password as well. All right, and so at this point, we are already logged in as this user, so-called Jonas. Let's keep that in mind. Next up, we need to choose which tour we actually want to create a review on, and let's again do it here at the forest hiker, so that then we get multiple reviews on the same tour, okay? And so what we're going to do now is to basically access that nested route that we just created. So we have the tours. Now we need to get the tour ID. And again, we're going to use this one for the forest hiker. And then /reviews. And then remember a post. Then we also need to specify the authorization. So bearer token. And then now in the body, all we really need is to specify the rating and the review. So the rating is 5. And then some text here. And so this should actually already be enough to try this out. So let's send it. And now we don't have permission to perform this action for some reason. So that's weird. So we signed up at this Jonas, and it's actually just a normal user, like it's supposed to be. So let's take a look at our router. So here, oh, okay, it's user, not users. Okay, so a small bug like that can, as you see, crash this entire route. So let's try it again now. And now we actually get the final review with both the tour and the user correctly defined. Well, at least I hope so. So the tour ID you see ends here in 951, and so it's exactly the same here. And the user is this 1F3, and so indeed it is this exact same one. All right, and so now we should actually be able to confirm that. And so this get tour here is actually already the one that we were creating the new review on. And so let's take a look. And indeed, we now get 2 reviews. So this one is the one that we just created. It is on the correct tour, and of course also the correct user with the name of Jonas. Awesome. That's really cool. So let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to create a new folder here again. I'm going to call it tours/reviews. Okay, and so now in here, let's create new review on tour. Okay, and that should actually be outside. Yeah, just like this. So let's actually put that one here. Doesn't really work as it should for some reason. And here we go. All right, so that worked just fine. But as I mentioned before, the implementation is a bit confusing at this point. And again, that is because we technically defined a review route in the tour router, right? And so that's a bit confusing. And so in the next video, we are going to fix that.